Good evening, everyone. My name is Ravi, and on behalf of DAKSH, I extend a very warm welcome to you all. Thank you for joining us for the launch of DAKSH's landmark report, the State of Tribunals 2025, a baseline report on India's commercial tribunals. This first of its kind report is part of DAKSH's Transforming Tribunals project, and today's launch event is being organized in collaboration with the Quantum Hub, DAKSH's advocacy partner. Commercial tribunals were originally conceived to play a critical role in advancing India's ease of doing business vision. They were designed to provide speed, expertise, and investor confidence, becoming central to business liquidity and timely dispute resolution. Yet, in practice, these tribunals face persistent challenges: high pendency, locked up capital, chronic vacancies, and governance gaps. DAKSH's baseline report maps these pressures across key commercial tribunals and proposes solutions to strengthen their functioning. This evening, we will discuss the hard-hitting realities uncovered by DAKSH's research and also hear from esteemed dignitaries and experts on the pathways ahead to strengthen our tribunal system. With this, let us begin the evening. I would now like to invite Mr. Rohit Kumar, founding partner at the Quantum Hub, to give his opening remarks and get the event started.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Survi. Let me begin by extending a warm welcome to all of you, especially our dignitaries, esteemed speakers, and panelists. Thank you for taking the time to be here. I know that this is especially a busy season with festivities happening and a lot of evening commitments. So I apologize in advance for pulling you away from your friends and family, but taking the time to be here for a very important discussion. I'm Rohit and I run the Quantum Hub TQH. We are a multi-sectoral public policy firm that was actually founded with the intent of taking ideas and evidence into policy. Our focus is applied research and advocacy, and we like to think of ourselves as the bridge between civil society, academia, industry on one side and policymakers on the other. So this event is a very important collaboration between DAKSH and TQH as the advocacy partner. We've had the pleasure of working with DAKSH in the past a couple of years ago on another very intractable sort of a public policy problem in property rights, which is just to say that I think we have a history of trying to punch above our weight. And with this same report, we are trying to do the same. And earlier this year, I just ended up meeting Surya in Delhi when he was talking about, and he happened to mention that this is a project that they have been working on. And it immediately struck me as something that is extremely important. And that was the time when we decided that perhaps we should collaborate to see how we can center some of these discussions in core policy conversations. Now, today's launch is a first in that effort in terms of that advocacy that we are going to do. The research that DAKSH has produced, I would say, many of you would have already seen the report that is in front of you. There's also a small brochure with the key findings. And the team will, of course, run a presentation. But I think that it is quite path-breaking because it is for the first time an entity has tried to estimate what is it that is locked up in our tribunals. And that number is mind-boggling, right? And at this time, I think as we are thinking of turbocharging the Indian economy, especially among all the geopolitical issues that are happening, I think sometimes this is not an issue that gets enough attention. And disputes don't just cause pain to litigants. They lock up capital, they slow down businesses, they create huge amounts of uncertainty. And this is all capital that could have gone into innovation, into job creation, into expansion. So it's in that context we wanted to be here. And so I'm really glad that all of you joined. And I hope this leads to more conversations and perhaps a joint push and a collective efforts towards advocacy. With that, let me hand it over to Surya to share his vision for the work. Thank you so much.
Warm welcome. I would have loved to say, but it's already so warm in Delhi coming from Bangalore. But anyway, so really, really glad many of you experts, very esteemed members in your respective domains have made time to join this conversation. Um, Justice Seshasayee is on his way, and looking forward to his presence and guidance. Some of you are new to the work, new to the events at DAKSH. DAKSH has been here working on judicial reforms for the last 10 years. Co-founder Harish is going to be the moderator of a panel. So we have, over the last 10 years, worked consistently on reimagining the justice system through data, processes, technology, and the institutional structures. Our work on access to justice surveys, or the state of judiciary reports, or our dashboards, the bail or the tax litigation dashboards, or the listing project, and then the pathways to digital courts collaborative. All of these has been building evidence and working on designing actionable reform ideas. This work on tribunals is a natural progression of our work. We bring the same rigor and approach to a limited class of institutions that are so important for the economy. This is to say that tribunals have not been examined as a class of institutions sufficiently enough in this country. It is the functioning of the tribunals have an important role to play in balancing the role of regulators, administrative actions, and therefore seen to be as much important for citizens' rights as much as constitutional courts and writ courts. But the judicial reforms discourse has not given enough space for these kind of institutions. There have been sporadic calls to revisit the very need for such institutions. Do we need tribunals at all? Shut them down. We have incorporated that mindset to a certain extent in our report. I view this report as the beginning. It sets a baseline for and opens up questions that need deeper exploration. And the report points to areas where much more needs to be done, whether in terms of building reliable data. It's so hard to find data. The websites are not reliable. RTI questions don't go answered. So difficult to find. And Ritima and team and all the team at DAKSH has done a fantastic work in trying to put together this data. So strengthening ideas to strengthen institutions, improving processes, and ensuring that tribunals can serve as true engines of justice and growth. Clearly, this is not the work for DAKSH alone. It requires a community of policymakers, judges, legal practitioners, researchers, and citizens to take this work forward. We see this initiative as an invitation to join forces in building institutions that are transparent, efficient, and trusted. Towards this end, we have recently launched the Network for Institutional and Systems Transformation, a fellowship where young professionals can work with leaders in the space to work on cutting-edge research ideas that are the need of the day. Much more needs to be done. The promise and the opportunity of tribunals is also that they can act as laboratories for larger judicial reforms. Because of the limited touch points and the leverage that it offers, you can affect so much more by just touching one institution or one process. It can act as pilot projects for larger judicial reforms. So I'm very excited to look forward to the keynote address and the esteemed panel members. This evening is an opportunity to reflect, to deliberate, and envision the future together. This is just the first step in a long journey, and at DAKSH, we love long journeys, we love tough problems, we love large, complex problems. We are committed to walking the journey, and we hope many of you will join us in this journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Surya sir, for setting the crucial context for today's discussion. We now move to the presentation of the report. May I invite Ms. Ritima Singh, Senior Research Associate at DAKSH, to join us on stage and share the key findings and recommendations from the State of Tribunals Report 2025.
Good evening, everyone. So, before we get into the boring part of too many numbers, I'll start with why we started off with this report, what is the idea, and how many tribunals we are looking at, because that will set the tone of how the numbers figure out. So, this is a work in series of work that DAKSH was already doing. It started off with the National Tribunals Commission report that DAKSH did, followed by a coalition of GSTAT, and followed by coalition on NCLT and NCLAT. Now, when we were working on NCLT and NCLAT, we found that in order to identify systematic issues, it is very necessary to look at similar other tribunals working in the same space who are impacting the economy and the business. That's how we targeted or narrowed down 10 tribunals that we are covering in this report: NCLT, NCLAT, DRT, DRAT, ITAT, SESTAT, SAT, TDSAT, APTIL, and GSTAT. These cover various various sectors like telecom, broadcasting, taxation, electricity, insolvency, debt recovery. Now comes the question, why are these tribunals suddenly so important? When we started calculating the cost stuck in these tribunals, it came to worth 24.7 lakh crores, that is 7.5% of the GDP. Therefore, it is very important to study tribunals, and there is a evident research gap where people are not actually noticing what these tribunals are doing and what is the outcome, followed by an a gap on their end in terms of public accountability and reporting. Now, why did we do this report was basically to look into how tribunals are handling all the critical matters that involve, that affect and impact the business and economy in India. And one of the important key points that came up in our conversation was the outcome of these tribunals directly impact investor confidence, business liquidity, finality in dispute resolution, commercial dispute resolution, and how businesses are conducted in India, ease of doing business. Now, what is the methodology? Here, we filed more than 80 RTIs in order to get data on these tribunals. We looked at websites of these tribunals, their parent organization, related regulatory bodies, and spoke to a lot of people in the industry, legal practitioners, members of the tribunals, and ministries in order to get their perception, their experience, and collect recommendations from them. Now comes the key finding part. Before I get into these numbers, we started off research with how tribunals came into existence. It was a 1920 Justice Rankin Committee report where he said back in 1920 that high courts are overburdened and therefore we need specialized tribunals for swift adjudication of commercial disputes. And then in 1941, we had Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, which is the first tribunal in this space, and followed by the recent GSTAT tribunal. Now, what is common in these tribunals is their administration, different parent ministries, and constant criticism from Honorable Supreme Court of India on ways how these tribunals are being dealt. I will quote R. Gandhi judgment, wherein the Supreme Court said that involvement of Parliament in tribunals' business is dilution of standards of how adjudication is being done in this country. Later on, the executives came up with Tribunal Reforms Act 2021, which gave the union government the entire power to recruit members in these tribunals, and therefore no heed was paid to the judgment, to the constant criticism of executives' involvement in the tribunals. Now, coming to how tribunals conduct their business, they are not governed with CPC, which is how most of the adjudication happens in India. They do not have any procedural rules. They work on the principles of natural justice, which is again not coded. It is a good thing because it supports swift adjudication, but it's a bad thing because it encourages a lot of ad hoc and arbitrary decision making. For instance, if we look at NCLAT, I think last in the year 2024, the mic is not working. Yeah. In the year 2024, some 198 cases were pending, and out of those, 40 got disposed, 20 were not allowed, and the 20 that were allowed, 19 went back to Competition Commission of India. So this is how remand is working in these tribunals. Now, this brings us to an important questions of case status report, which is right here. Disputes worth 24.7 lakh crores are stuck in these tribunals. Severe pendency. Most of the people who appear before NCLT or are involved in insolvency would know this figure, that it takes on an average 752 days to complete a resolution process in India. However, the codified under IBC, it says 330 days is the limit. So this means 2 years, more than 2 years, a matter is stuck in court, minimum. Now, staffing crisis. It is not just that the members are sanction strength or actual strength is a issue. It is we found out through RTIs that 80% of the members deployed in these tribunals are contractual staff, which challenges the stability of the tribunal. And as far as sanctioned and the actual in strength is concerned, I think ITAT currently has 20 vacancies. Otherwise, most of the tribunals are sorted in terms of member strength. However, in NCLT and NCLAT, there's this one challenging thing we found out. These tribunals came into place to adjudicate on company law matters with a strength of 63 members. However, eventually their mandate kept growing to competition law, to insolvency, to NAFRA, and the sanction strength never grew. And it is only this year they reached close to achieving their sanction strength also. So this is again a problem which nobody actually talked of or spoke of. Why are these tribunals not performing? This is one of those reasons. During our conversations, we found out, and also in our visits to various tribunals, infrastructure is a major challenge. These tribunals work out of places which are not very supportive, like there is an elevator issue, there are washroom issues and whatnot. Then governance issue, we found that all these tribunals are, the parent ministries are often the parties to the dispute, which to some extent challenges the independence of these institutions. Now, it is only Income Tax Appellate Tribunal which is governed by Ministry of Law and Justice. Apart from that, all the other tribunals are, their parent department is, so for example, NCLT and NCLAT has a Ministry of Corporate Affairs is their parent, which is often the party, and also they interact with MCA for seeking documents and other things. So they can't actually be a court to their own parent department. Now, coming to scale of pendency, over 3.56 lakh cases are pending across 10 commercial tribunals that we have covered in this report. And again, this is a very conservative number because a lot of information we did not get through RTI, and most of these tribunals are not transparent in terms of giving out the data. Their websites do not have this information, annual reports don't have this information, most of the parent department also don't cover, so this is a conservative estimate. Quality of members, If we talk about the other 7, 8 tribunals that we have covered apart, barring NCLT and NCLAT, the appointment adheres to the rule and the rules adhere to the what is required for the role. However, at NCLT and NCLAT, after doing an extensive member profiling, we found 80% of the technical members are retired bureaucrats and bankers from public sector and private sector, which somehow questions, again, conflict of interest. Now, implication part here is very important as to how these tribunals are different from other adjudication forums. These are certain categories of implications that we have listed out here and covered extensively in the report. First is uncertain dispute resolution. We saw in Bhushan Steel also there is no finality of judgment when it comes to certain cases. And there is higher risk for investors. Investors tend to lose their confidence. Contract enforcement is a problem. Fragmented tribunals lose public trust. Our reform pathways are, again, we have based it on 3 themes. First is legislative reform, where we are suggesting some of the tribunals that are not functioning well, or as we heard from one of the stakeholders, are out of business, that is DRT and DRAT. They should either be attached or dissolved and converted to a specialized bench in a high court. Second, our major key recommendation is to have an organization, independent organization like National Tribunals Commission, to look into people, that is appointments, salaries, tenures, to look into process, that is capacity building, transparency, and procedural aspects, to look into data, that is how these tribunals are consuming data, how these tribunals are processing the data, and how these tribunals are disseminating the data, and to look into technology part. It is very absurd practice that is being followed in various tribunals, e-filing being coupled with physical filing. So digitization has to be in a sense and not just for the optics part of it. Yeah, this is it for me. I'll invite Sylvie back.
Thank you, Ritima, for the comprehensive presentation of the report. We are still waiting for Justice Seshasayee to arrive, and we will now be beginning our panel discussion with our expert speakers. The theme for today's panel is Transforming Commercial Tribunals in India, Pathways, Priorities, and Synergies. On the panel, we are honored to have with us Justice Shiva Singh, former judge of the Supreme Court of India and former chairperson of the Telecom Dispute Settlement and Appellate Tribunal. Beginning his career at the Patna High Court, Justice Singh went on to serve as Chief Justice of the Allahabad High Court before being elevated to the Supreme Court in 2013. After retiring in 2016, he led TDSAT from 2017 for 5 years and now contributes to mediation and arbitration. Sir, if we may please have you on stage with us. Our second panelist for the evening is Mr. Pramod Kumar, former Vice President of the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal. Mr. Kumar is a chartered accountant and lawyer by education. During his tenure at ITAT, Sir authored more than 15,000 pioneering judgments in direct taxes, international taxation, and transfer pricing. He has served on the board of the International Association of Tax Judges and contributed to global tax discourse at forums such as the OECD and the United Nations. As advisor, litigator, adjudicator, and thought leader, he continues to shape conversations on complex tax matters worldwide. Sir, if we may please have you on stage. We also have with us Ms. Aparna Ravi, partner S&R Associates, where she specializes in banking and finance, restructuring, and insolvency. Ma'am has advised leading financial institutions and corporates on complex transactions and was a member of the government's Bankruptcy Law Reform Committee. With prior experience at international law firms and teaching engagements at the NLSIU Bangalore, she continues to contribute to the development of insolvency law in India. Ma'am, if we may please have you on stage. We are also joined by Mr. Sumant Batra, insolvency lawyer and past president, INSOL International. Mr. Batra is a leading insolvency lawyer with nearly 3 decades of international experience and is a past president of INSOL International. Recognized among the top 30 global experts in insolvency, he has advised the IMF, World Bank, OECD, and other multilateral bodies. An international fellow of the American College of Bankruptcy, he is also a prolific author with works spanning insolvency law, mediation, biographies, and literature. Sir, if we may please have you on stage with us. Today's expert discussion will be moderated by Senior Advocate Harish Narasappa. Sir is also the co-founder of DAKSH, as well as being the founding partner of Samvad Partners. Sir regularly appears before courts and tribunals across India and advises on complex corporate, finance, and dispute resolution matters. A scholar with degrees from the NLSIU Bangalore and University of Oxford and the University of London, he combines practice with thought leadership on law and governance. Sir, if we may please have you on stage. I now invite Harish sir to kindly take the discussion forward.
Thank you. Congratulations to the DAKSH team for bringing out this report. Tribunals is something we have studied on and off over the last 8 to 10 years. But it's only for the first time that we have come out with a comprehensive study covering various tribunals. So we thank all our friends who have goaded and encouraged us to do this, despite our despondency sometimes. But I'm glad to see that there is renewed interest. If at all interest was lacking at any time, there's renewed interest in trying to address the problem, which everybody talks about in different perspectives, but nobody tries to tackle it in terms of processes and institutional structure. You know, numbers are sometimes misleading, but numbers also, hold a mirror to how the institutions are functioning. So what is sensational is, 24.7 lakh crores, only about 300 odd members in different tribunals dealing with this massive amount of capital or money, revenue, whatever is locked up. It's leading to a slide down the ease of doing business rankings, various things. But behind all this is the structural problem of what happens in courts and tribunals across India in terms of certainty of event on a daily basis. At the end of any year, on the 365th day, you can't start analyzing what the problem was, because the problem gets accumulated from day one. So this report only helps us to focus on what the daily problems that the courts and tribunals face. We are focusing on tribunals today. But the problems are similar. There are added problems, there are some distinct problems that tribunals have compared to courts, but the broad um, spectrum of problems are sort of they run concurrent to what the courts and tribunals face. So with that sort of brief background and the report that DAKSH has produced, let me jump straight into it. I think we all thought we had another 20 minutes before we came here, but let's try and make sense of some of the questions that bother us about this. I'll start with Justice Singh. So you have seen both sides in terms of this debate between courts and tribunals. I think to some extent that debate is, I think it's water under the bridge, because tribunals, I think, are here to stay. And I dare say I don't think we're going to see a tribunal-less judicial process. I don't think we're going to see that. So while it may be good for academic discussions, but tribunals are here to stay. In what form, what kind of reforms is something we can discuss. But so you have been, you've been a judge in the High Court and the Supreme Court, and then you also headed a tribunal for 5 years.
And earlier an advocate
So
for 2 decades.
that goes without saying, sir. That goes without saying. But sir, yes. So two questions I want to ask, sir. One, is there a fundamental difference between being a judge in a High Court and Supreme Court and heading a tribunal? And if so, what is it? That's the first question. Second, in terms of there were two primary arguments for tribunals. One is the need for technical knowledge in resolving disputes. And that may be true of, say, electricity, TDSAT to some extent, and all of that. And the second is, we are going to resolve disputes in a much faster, quicker, more commercial-oriented method of resolving. So is that something that you saw? Is that difference evident, or is it something that is not really evident?
Before going to answer the two questions and related issues, first I'd like to congratulate DAKSH. Why I agreed to be in this panel was because I wanted to see how much effort is being put by the youngsters of today's to see reforms materializing. It's a very important sector, and the effort is to be lauded. The results will follow. It will take time. But I wanted to be personally here to congratulate the young team. They have done a good job, and they must keep this going. Then I went through some of the key findings of the team in this report. But before I touch that, I'll like to be very precise in answering what came from Harish. First, yes, when I joined, I was elevated as a judge of the High Court and later as in the Supreme Court. I never had any doubt that my judgments are going to be respected, even at the High Court level. There are very few cases where I found them being turned down or reversed. That every judge knows. There is an appeal provided or a special leave is there. But the finality, yes, the judgments are going to be respected. But I never had that feeling in the tribunal. In the tribunal, the feeling was that it's going to be an endless struggle. The party needs an, emergent relief, urgent relief, but there is Article 226. No legislature is going to override that. So High Court can always poke its nose if it is so inclined. And you can select a proper High Court because you can go to a party affected in any of those states. Sometimes the policies affect everybody. So I saw this forum shopping, one of the issues raised in the report, and it sparked so many thoughts in my mind, because these are the trouble spots. They go against the interests of justice, against the grains of good judicial system. So in the tribunal, I always had this feeling that tribunal's verdicts, those supposed to be final in the chosen sphere sector, but they have hardly any finality. Appeal is provided, of course, from my TDSAT, it was to the Supreme Court directly. And most of the times I found High Court respecting that indirectly, once the appeal is there, why 226? Because effective alternative relief is available. So that doctrine always stands in the way of, as a guidance. But that takes time, and there are matters in which I found some interested parties finding out recourse. Appeal before Supreme Court was, of course, very quick affair. I generally found not too much of interference, except in very vexed matters. I must clarify here that TDSAT is not an adjudicatory tribunal, strictly speaking. It's a regulatory because it hears appeals from TRAI, Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. And as the name itself suggests, telecom disputes settlement, then appellate tribunal. So the word settlement means once you are dealing with the regulatory authority and you are the appellate authority, there must be an element of settlement, which is in the best interest of the sector. You try to come to that conclusion. And if it cannot be settled, then you adjudicate. So whenever the question arose that why can't we have, branches of TDSAT in other states, I said, you can't have enough experts here in this one body. Where are you going to find the experts in all these states? And regulation will not be effective if you have so many voices. Regulation must come from one, where the buck stops. So regulatory tribunals, I wrote, and I wrote to government also. I'm in principle against benches because of likelihood of different opinions being given by the different benches. So my comfort level in the courts was much higher than in the tribunal. I had to make requests for very ordinary things like some secretarial staff, some posts to be created. When the jurisdiction was being enhanced, they included cyber cases in IT Act also, along with the telecom and broadcasting. IT came. Then Airport Economic Regulatory Authority, that also came under TDSAT. I requested, give me at least 2 expert members, one dealing with IT, another dealing with this tariff of airports. But I never received any positive response. Maybe I never received a response. So these are the hard facts which I had to communicate, because the provisions in the books, in the policies, need to be implemented. And implementation, like, in the legal field, decree in a civil suit is the beginning of the litigation. Execution is the real battle. How do you get the money? So that battle is always there. Execution is very difficult unless there is a strong will being from the top. So in these fields, policy must be framed in consultation with the highest policy makers, so that the will is there. Even if we suggest something comes as a piecemeal, I find it cannot be implemented. That is my feeling as a member, chairperson of the TDSAT. Then, Harish, can you repeat the second question for my favor? Because while talking so much, I lost track.
Sir, I think you have answered both the questions. Second, I asked what was the difference between being a judge of the higher courts and being on the commission. And second was in terms of expert knowledge. So I think...
So expert knowledge, I do feel the necessity. Tribunals must have the expert members, and the experts can come from the bureaucracy also. I am not averse to any service. But there are different ways of selecting the experts. Here I would like to go to the basics from where the power of the tribunal has come. whose power has been reserved by the tribunals? The civil courts. In our judicial system, civil courts have more power than even the high courts. Anything which is not a criminal matter can be entertained by the civil court. So any issue, any dispute, naturally, ordinarily lies before the civil court. You take out a part of that jurisdiction for good reasons. The good reasons we were told when these tribunals were being formed was that civil courts take long number of years, which is true. And the next generation may not see the fruits. Therefore, how the commercial and economic field will bear it out? There will be no investment. So we are totally agreed. Let's carve out the power of the civil court, give it to some other organization, some other establishment. These tribunals could have experts, and then they would be committed to certain types of tribunal disputes. So therefore, fast resolution, limited numbers. Two things went wrong in my view. One was unexpectedly large number of disputes started coming before these tribunals, and the numbers can sink any ship. If the number increases beyond its buoyancy capacity, it will sink. That is what is happening with the tribunals. So the bigger ship is required. Judge population ratio, I've been hearing in several conferences since 2 decades at least, but I have never seen any serious discussion about that. Why bother oneself with the teeming people? But those teeming millions are now coming to courts. They are not averse to coming courts. Their capacity is gradually increasing, their awareness is increasing, they are going to come to courts for their different rights, big or small. And then we have to think ultimately whether it is for tribunal or for courts, this judge population ratio must be respected. We are not short of funds anymore. We have enough financial muscles. So we must come forward with real solutions. If our civil court is totally empowered, it has the infrastructure, we can recruit experts in the civil courts. We can have a special class amongst the judges, special recruiting, special incentives. So where the tribunals are failing, we can go back to the civil court as suggested in the report somewhere. It was being discussed, indicated in brief, that some tribunals are having no work. Then dissolve them if no work. Plain answer, dissolve them. Why burden the system? Why create an illusion of justice delivery system where people are reluctant to go or no justice can be done for X, Y, or Z reasons? So dissolve them, go for after their performance appraisal and find out their utility. It can go back to civil court. You can in places like Delhi where the High Court has original jurisdiction, it can go to benches of the High Court. But then you have to have a very clear-cut recruitment policy. You can have lateral entry of some judges from other services. You hold a test. Any good student from any branch can become a good judge. He just needs a few weeks of training. Just give him the hierarchy. Constitution is supreme. All laws must yield to the Constitution. Once he has the constitutional vision, he will not be guided by the laws. Once he knows that rules are subordinate to the law, parliament-made law, he will not have enough respect for the rules. What happens in absence of such training, when I sit with the administrative members, not the judicial members in the tribunals, ordinarily I find they stick to the executive instructions, the rules. They are the Bible. How can I disregard what has come from the ministry? That must be followed. Forget what is there in the judgment, what is there in the Constitution. The constitutional principles are not clear to them. So we can create that awareness, but we must have a class of specialized judges and give them regular in the cadre. We can give them more incentive and disposal. So we have to begin, make a fresh beginning. That is my view. We need experts. We need tribunals in most of the spheres to deliver justice quickly. We have taken them out from the civil court's jurisdiction. only for that purpose. And for that, we must have dedicated, judges or members. They must come from a cadre where they can be held accountable. If they are not deciding the cases, if they are not sitting in time, there must be accountability. And it is not very difficult. Our constitution is so eloquent. Besides 226, we have 227. In every state, High Court exercises control over all tribunals, all judicial performing authorities. Just have to create a synergy, create, supervising boards where you have a judge from the High Court also. And the evaluation will take place and the working will improve. There are no guardians here over there, most of the tribunals. The timings are haywire. Their adjournments are numerous. The judgments don't come in time. Somebody must be there.
So many people have complained about judicial demeanor as well. That
Yes.
many
It's lack of
tribunals lack of.
So there, once you induct them laterally also from a cadre, then the accountability will be there. There will be promotion. There will be many rewards. Create that thing. But we are presuming at the beginning that these tribunals are only ad hoc. We cannot have even chaprasis on a permanent basis because tomorrow we may close them. So if that mindset, where are you going to have a committed cadre of judges? These retired people are not good enough. And what are we paying the retired people? I felt it. Later on, probably they improved. But they said, you are getting a lakh as a pension. We'll give you only the other lakh. Not 2 lakhs, which other people will come from the cadre. They will get 2 lakhs for working, doing the same work. But you will get only half because you have earned your pension somewhere. Is it a fair principle? How much incentive it will create? Many people think, very well, then I'll lead a retired life. I'll sit only for 2-3 hours, enough for half the salary. So there is not too much of thinking in making these tribunals effective. And I think we have to make a grand beginning by suggesting something lock, stock and barrel.
Okay.
Right from the cadre, right from the governance, monitoring, punishment, rewards, everything has to be worked out. Then only, like civil court, we will have a predictable outcome from these tribunals on an improved level. More expert opinion infusing the judgments and quicker disposal, because we'll be looking after them properly. They will come laterally on a better footing.
Thank you, sir. I think I'll come back to you on the couple of points that you made, sir. But I think you have given us a.
You may not ask more questions from me. I don't know.
No, sir. I think I want to pick up on one point. I'll come back to you later, so after I go to the other panelists. Yes. Sumant, so IBC, when it came, I think you know what question I'm going to ask you, but I'm going to ask you 2 questions as well. IBC, when it came, was a big hope, not just for insolvency, but also for the scheme it created, right? In terms of time-bound schemes, resolution. And many of us had hoped that that would actually become the blueprint for other tribunals as we move on. But what we have seen, is nothing short of disappointing, right? I think some of the numbers are there, but even those numbers, I think many of us practitioners know, are deceptive, right? Because you're now taking only what is in the NCLT. What happens in NCLAT is a different thing. What happens in Supreme Court is a different thing. And unlike, say, tax, there are other touch points for the insolvency process in terms of other courts, arbitrations, etc., etc. So the obvious question is, what about the promise and reality of IBC in connect? And was the NCLT the right vehicle? Because it's not National Insolvency Law Tribunal, it's actually National Company Law Tribunal, and the company law practitioners are all now feeling left out because NCLT doesn't have time for company law practice. That's the first question. So is it a lot of promise, reality? What are in your view, what are the top 3 problems that we face?
Thank you so much, Harish. I would also start by congratulating the DAKSH team. Phenomenal report. I browsed through it, and I think it'll be of great value to the policymakers and also for the various tribunals to reflect on how they could probably improve upon, the disappointments are writ large. The numbers speak for themselves. I also noticed that while the backdrop here says commercial tribunals, your report cover doesn't say so, uh, but you do cover the commercials tribunals, as the presentation also mentioned. But in my view, the commercial tribunals also can be split into two parts: the commercial tribunals and the economic law tribunals, because both have very different approach that they need in terms of how they administer their functions and how the functioning of those tribunals, commercial or the economic, have a direct bearing on the GDP growth. And your numbers are there. You did mention 24 odd lakh crore rupees, a certain very significant portion of the GDP. And that is what we are depriving this country of in terms of how we could improve the quality of life of our citizens. You mentioned, Harish, that are the tribunals here to stay? They are a reality. I, I believe that some tribunals are definitely here to stay, but some would need to reinvent themselves, and I think this report could actually become the trigger point for that. And the others probably would have to pave way for better institutions. We shouldn't really start by accepting that the tribunals are here to stay and therefore we should only tweak the reforms. We should do what we call as patchwork reform. We will need a very revolutionary approach, and you use that word as well, and Justice Singh said that very emphatically. I must say that IBC is a landmark not just in view of how it was pitched and what is the aspirations that it set, but in terms of most significantly, despite being a blue chip reform, I believe the most significant besides GST in the independent India. But what it did was how it showed to the world and also to India how laws need to be implemented, at least in the first 4 years. It was remarkable. And since I was a part of that, I would like to share with you that even before the IBC became operational on 1st of December, I say IBC became operational, in the sense it was rolled out on 1st of December 2016. Although we all know that 1st June of that year was when NCLT became operational and 1st October was when IBBA became operational. But ever from the time that the president notified the IBC, it was very clear that the entire political might of the government was set to be behind the IBC rollout, because they all understood the significance of that. And the reason for that was that not only was that it was a much needed reform which had been delayed for decades, despite Irani committee, despite before that Iradi committee, despite the 2013 bill having been tabled in the parliament but passed, but obviously that part of the law 2013 act was not notified. But when Prime Minister Modi visited US after taking over Prime Minister, and he met World Bank, IMF, and various global institutions, and invited them to invest in India now that there was a stable government, there was a recharged government. The only one question that everybody asked him was, where is the exit law? Where is the insolvency law? Because they felt that that is an integral part of any attractive entry law. And that is when he came back and asked the finance minister, Mr. Arun Jaitley at that time, to do this on top priority. And of course, we all know that the banking sector was on the verge of collapse, the twin balance sheet problem, the window dressing of the balance sheets by the banks. We all knew the pileup of the NPLs. We knew that there was no capitalization, no fresh lending happening in the market, and therefore IBC was a compulsion, and it had to be rolled out with full vigor, and there was a complete roadmap, complete blueprint of how that would be done. And never ever in the history of India, modern India, a law has been implemented with that kind of might in the first 3 years. 4 brand new institutions were set up from the scratch in a very short time. The government took the leap of faith by pushing the dirty dozen, the 12 cases which constitute 25% of the total NPLs in the books of the company, and later on another 2 dozen. taking the risk that even with the new law, with new institutions, we would be able to sort of deal with the might of these cases, the complexity of these cases, and yet prove to the world that we can take them head on, catch the bull by the horn. And it happened in the first 2 years. But obviously, down the line, we started slipping, and here we are discussing NCLT in a very poor light in that sense. Now, where did we go wrong? To answer your question, despite all this, there are two reasons, and that is to answer the first part of the first question. The first one was that in the entire process of the rollout of IBC, we set the expectations so high. We created a gold standard implementation, the energy, the resources, everything, the collective effort of the, from the PMO, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, IBBI, the banks, the industry itself, set the expectations very high. And since in the first few cases we saw the same kind of collective effort by the stakeholders to make it happen, we were all left with an expectation that this is how it is going to work all the time. And it didn't. It didn't for a variety of reasons. Some of these Justice Singh very elegantly explained, which are very common to all the tribunals. And of course, the report speaks out aloud about that. But the other reason, which I think is a compulsive blunder that we committed, we had no choice at that point in time, was that we did not gather the courage to create an adjudicating authority with the DNA of IBC. The law doesn't contemplate NCLT. NCLT was contemplated under the Companies Act. It was created on the recommendations of Iradi Committee in 1999. It was created, and I was a part of all that process, it was created to solve the problems of 1990s, which were a legacy of the problem of 1980s. We had no vision of India as we have today. I'm not talking of political vision. I'm talking of the visions of the citizens, of a youth of this country, which is out of 1.5 billion, nearly 70 million is less than 30 years of age. We did not have that vision, either in the parliament or in the government, or perhaps even in the market. NCLT itself got caught in a constitutional challenge. There was a whole thinking from that judgment of what was Lalit Kumar judgment, the tribunalization of justice. That thinking of all of tribunalization justice was based on a very different, to solve the problem of 80s and 90s. Overloading in the courts of the justice, reduce their backlog. And in that context, discuss who should be the members of the tribunal, who technical, judicial, how they should be appointed. All that was in the context of 1980s and 1990s. Sir, please. And nobody, NCLT, as we all know, that NCLT itself got caught in a challenge. Madras High Court Bar Association went to the Supreme Court twice. The changes had to be made in the NCLT's selection process and composition. And it had not been even operationalized at the time when 2016 IBC was notified. And at that point in time, the government thought, it has taken 8-10 years for NCLT constitutional violations to get cleared. If we today create a adjudicating authority with its own DNA and its own grain, and if it goes into a challenge, IBC will be a non-starter. And therefore, they thought it will be safer to give it to NCLT to man, because NCLT had stood the test of time as far as the constitution challenge is concerned. And therefore, IBC is managing one of the most dynamic laws, very sophisticated, complex. It takes decades for you to understand it. Even I today myself, after 30 years, claim to be a student. Every day you learn something new, because it's not just insolvency. Insolvency law has a solar system of its own. Over 100 laws operate in its orbit. You need to have that kind of understanding. But besides that, the whole idea was that you wanted an adjudicating authority, not a tribunal. That is why the word tribunal was not used. The whole idea was that you have people who understand the topic, who have expertise on this topic, and who understand how turnaround happens. You don't need necessarily a top-notch legal expertise for that. You don't need to have spent time in the government for that. You don't need to have been a High Court judge or a Supreme Court judge for that. The adjudicating authority was to be comprised of hardcore experts on insolvency who understood the nuances, the sophistication and the finesse of insolvency. How do you transform a non-performing asset into a performing asset so that it goes back to insolvency?
But where do we find those? Sorry to
Yes,
interrupt. Where do we find those experts?
Yeah, so I was just going to come to that. How do you find that? If no expert of a particular stature who makes millions sitting advising companies on turnaround will come and apply on an advertisement that you issued in Times of India or Economic Times, say, oh, we are selecting members, please apply. Who would want to apply to face a rejection? Because we all know how members are selected. We all know that. I would never apply. Why would I face a rejection and then rest of my life be known as someone who was rejected for being appointed as a member, where for the last 10 years I have argued, and I can say this not because of arrogance. There are a number of lawyers who know better than any member of the adjudicating authority. Nobody applies there because nobody wants a rejection. So what you need is, solution is, you need, like you have for the High Court, search and selection committee, not a selection committee, as you have presently, where the committee headed by the Supreme Court judge invites Mr. So-and-so, enough making money, enough private sector, come and serve the nation for 5 years or 10 years. And that will also solve the problems that Justice Singh mentioned, that it will create the biggest incentive that you perform well to guard your reputation. If you're appointing people who have served 62 years in the government, they have no incentives to guard their reputation. Not only for the reasons that Justice Singh very eloquently mentioned, because you don't give staff, you don't give salary, you don't give them that kind of infrastructure, why the hell should I spend my time? The problem is you don't have anything to guard your reputation because you never go back to the market again. And when you have to go back to the market and you have to operate in the same market, what you carry only is, I have a track record of having performed as best member for 5 years. That's the issue. That's where the problem lies. I just want to mention one more thing.
Sure.
I feel that the time has come where we have to take out the NCLT from the IBC, retain only National Company Law Appellate Tribunal. At Appellate Tribunal, we shall have judges and only judges. We don't need technical members there at all. What value do they add? It is the judges we need there from the High Court and the chairperson from the Supreme Court who know the law, who know how to conduct court, and if a question comes in appeal, which is a principle of law, they will deal with it. You don't need these principles of law, etc. at the tribunal adjudicating authority stage. And this is something we must do. At Insolvency Law Academy, we are already talking about it. And on 5th December, we're doing a roundtable where we're inviting very eminent senior judges, bureaucrats, and everybody to rehash this issue. And I'd like to welcome DAKSH to make this presentation there as well, in the context of all the tribunals, but in particular about the NCLT, because we'll probably have the ears of some policymakers who would be able to act on this. These are my 2 penny thoughts.
No, fascinating. And it's not surprising, but the commonality of views that both Justice Singh and Sumant have expressed, I think, reflect that there are many people who know what the problems are. We need to move into action. And, I thought I won't start the provocation by asking whether we should recast everything, but I think both Justice Singh and Sumant have thrown the challenge out there to see how we can move forward. I'll come to Aparna next. Sir, I'll come to you because I want to deal with ITAT, because ITAT, somehow, at least Surya tells me ITAT is the golden tribunal. I'll come back to you on that. But Aparna, because Sumant is talking about IBC. You were also, and I remember you and I spoke when after the BLRC committee report and when the IBC became law, and we were discussing some of the questions that we're talking today as to how will the tribunals function, who are the experts, what kind of expertise is required. And now Sumant has identified the problem with the adjudicating authority. And if you compare, say, to the first level of adjudicating authority in a tax dispute, right? It's done by a commissioner, first by the assessing authority and then by commissioner, and then it goes to ITAT and then the courts. Here it's NCLT directly. And if you look at the members appointed at NCLT, I'm not talking about NCLAT, in NCLT, it's either retired judges, district judges and some high court judges, or lawyers who may not have any experience either in company law or in insolvency law. And then technical members, mostly chartered accountants or sometimes I think company secretaries. Does that sort of, because of is it, and Sumant did answer that, but is it the failure to appoint the right personnel that is causing the problem? Or is it the design flaw in the act where we change the mandated timelines to recommendatory by an order of the Supreme Court, of course? We can discuss that endlessly, but is did that take away from the timeline promise of the tribunal? That's question number one. Question number two, the argument for moving tribunals back wholesale into high courts or civil courts. Does that appeal to you, or is that something we shouldn't entertain?
Questions were very interesting. I think Sumant has put it out there, so I think it's great for all of us to think about it. So first, am I audible? Yeah, okay. No. First, I'd like to echo everyone. This is a fantastic report that DAKSH has put together. And it's one thing to see the numbers, but to go into that level of detail and sort of dice out what exactly comes out of it and also make recommendations, I think it's going to be really helpful for all of us thinking about these issues, and especially for policymakers. So coming to Harish, your first question on the timelines, I'll get to the timelines, but just to talk a little bit about my experience on the BLRC at the time that we were thinking of how this law would come about. And Sumant already spoke a little bit about it. But one thing that was quite unique about the IBC was that it called for all these new institutions to be set up, right? A new profession of insolvency professionals. They also had this information utilities. You had a new regulator. And of course, you had the adjudicating authority. And interestingly, I never thought all of these institutions could be set up and running so quickly as they did. But I think there was a lot of push in that direction for them to be set up. And it started out much better than a lot of us expected. But one thing that was always a little bit of a question mark was what would be the adjudicating authority, first of all, and how that would function, just given all the baggage and all the information we've seen so far about how tribunals function. And one principle that even early on in the BLRC report that was there was that we should realize that the adjudicating authority is a scarce resource. And the purpose of the law was not to use it as much as it's being used, and ended up being used. And in this, I just want to say that the IBC itself, it's slightly different from the normal sort of dispute resolution process, because it's not necessarily a contentious process. It can be, and it has been in many cases, but it's generally a process through which a company gets resolved, right, or turned around. And so the kind of adjudication you need there is very different from the normal kind of what you think of as a tribunal to look at, a specific, where an administrative order, for example, is being questioned. It's a very different process there. And so given that, I do think that perhaps not enough thought was put into I think we just had to find one tribunal to look at it, and then I think it went to the NCLT. That said, on the timelines itself, I think the law initially, there was a huge amount of focus on the importance of timelines, because especially in insolvency, timelines are very critical. As the time goes on, the assets are already distressed, they're going to deplete very rapidly, and in that sense, any sort of delays are really impair the entire prospect of turnaround itself. And so every step in the process itself had timelines, which were intended to be followed. And I think the very first case that got admitted, it actually came very close to following that timeline for admission. But of course, after that, that didn't continue. It very quickly, the timeline started slipping. And then the Supreme Court, the court said very clearly it's directive and not mandatory. And it's interesting that now with the IBC amendment bill, they've said that, you need to give reasons if a timeline is not adhered to. But the only thing is, and I'm just wondering, and I've thought about this a lot, I don't have an answer to this, is of course, if the parties themselves don't adhere to certain timelines, you could have certain penalties and other ways of trying to have some consequences for that. But if the NCLT doesn't, or any tribunal doesn't pass an order within a certain amount of time, what is the consequence? And that is something that I'm not sure. I would love a discussion on that. So that is something, so there has to be something more than, I think the only thing that could work to some extent is close monitoring of this, by to see whether, there are certain benches are following the timelines, are certain benches not following the timelines. And at least as far as the IBC is concerned, I think the timeline for admission at the very beginning of the process and the timeline within which a resolution plan is approved, those two, if they are taken care of, I think a lot of things happen in the middle with disputes and everything. That would make a huge difference. And that's...
Second question, do you want to hazard a guess? Or
second question was on the...
Should some aspects be moved back to civil courts as...
I don't know if it's moving it back to another body, because I think IBC was to a large extent a new legislation. It was a new way of conceiving of insolvency itself. So I don't have a very strong view on which tribunal or where it should be, but definitely the manner of, the way in which the NCLTs have been constituted, the appointment process, all of that is an issue that I think has already been mentioned. And I think that is something we really need to look at. Today there is no sort of, I don't think any lawyer, as Sumant was saying, thinks a career path is being a member of the NCLT, right? So that's something that does need to change, because there are people now who've been practicing the IBC who could be there. So.
Yeah, Sumant wants to add.
Yes, I just wanted to add two very quick comments. I don't think we need to sort of take out anything from the scheme of the jurisdiction of the adjudicating authority. We just need to set the house in order by taking 3 steps. First, we need to change the process of appointment, move it from selection committee to search and selection committee, as it happens with a lot of appointments in this country. Number 2, we need to change the criteria for selection, the qualifications. We have 11 years of enough experience in the market, and therefore we can always say that anybody has about 8 years of experience in insolvency. I have no problem with somebody who's been a regional secretary in the Ministry of Corporate Affairs who wants to come and become a member because he has good experience of working on the policy, he understands. Or a whole-time member of IBB who has served for 5 years because he's working the regulations, he understands the nuances. But I don't think anybody else needs to aspire. Oh. These are the 2 quick points that I wanted to make.
Okay.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
When you talk about search and selection committee versus selection committee, technically these are called search and selection committee even today. These are search cum selection committee. I think the more critical part is who are the persons who are manning it? Who are the persons who are actually taking decisions? Who says final? As long as you don't bring in a qualitative change in the composition of the committees and the commitment of these people to the larger causes, Until that time, problem will not be solved. You have a selection, you have a committee today which has the job of searching also, and they'll come up either with the people who are favorite to the establishment or their own nephews and nieces. What's the point of doing it? I mean, the solution is somewhere else.
No, I agree, and I think that's the problem we face with appointment process, right? And that's something we have failed to get it right even after so many years. And there are, design issues, every single tribunal, High Court, Supreme Court, everywhere, these are questions. But see, constantly asking questions doesn't mean the entire thing is wrong. But fixing design problems of the process is important. After that, I'm sure there will be, doubts about some process, some appointments, some processes not being followed in certain cases. But that's okay. But as long as it's the exception and not the rule, and I think that's what both of you are saying, right? Soft infrastructure is important. Okay, I quickly want to ask Mr. Pramod Kumar 2 questions. One, ITAT, unlike say NCLAT or APTEL or TDSAT, ITAT is considered like the final fact-finding authority for tax issues, direct taxes. It also deals with transfer pricing, cross-border tax, things like that, which is slightly complicated compared to your regular direct tax, domestic taxation issues. But still, ITAT seems to have a reasonably good track record in the pace with which it is resolving disputes. In fact, what we heard recently is that actually the pendency in certain benches of ITAT is very, very less. Then somebody else said, no, that's because commissioner appeals are not passing orders. Anyway, that's another point altogether. But somehow ITAT, seems to be generally perceived to be a better tribunal compared to others. Say, for want of a better comparison, NCLT today. That's the first point. So what do you think about it? Is there some design, advantage that the ITAT had that others tribunals don't have? That's the first question. Second question, has ITAT met the objective in terms of resolving disputes quickly on because the number of appeals from ITAT to high courts are also still, it's not as if it's, it's reduced, less in number, it's increasing also. And the department, I understand, is the culprit many times. So just your quick thoughts on those two points.
First of all, ITAT is a very different tribunal from the kind of tribunals we are discussing for several reasons. One reason, of course, is it's one of the oldest. It was 84 years ago, way back in 1941, that Income Tax Appellate Tribunal was established. And that's the reason it's sometimes loosely called Mother Tribunal. And then second thing, which I think is very, very important, is it has a very strong institutional culture. This culture is now in a stage where there is a challenge to the existing culture, in the sense there's a transformation in the kind of members who are coming, in the process of appointment. When I joined the tribunal, for example, I was just 39-year-old and I had 23 years to spend in the tribunal. That was a huge platform and it was a long tenure. So there was so much to learn, and there was lateral learning, and there was opportunities to develop your expertise in niche areas. Now in the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal also, you have people who come for 4 years. The batch which I inducted when I was in the tribunal and I was part of the training program, that batch is about to retire. Now, there are about 35 boys, young boys and girls, who will leave the tribunal after 4 years of service. Some of them are as young as 42, 43. And then they have a restriction of not appearing before any bench of the tribunal anywhere in the country today. So, what is the situation we are looking at? Think of their insecurities. Think of the pressure under which they work. So today there's a huge change in the tribunal. When I joined the tribunal, most of the people who were joining were between 38 years to 42 or 43 years. Today, the people who join the tribunal are between 60 years to 64 years. They have already retired from the income tax department or from the district judiciary, or they are about to retire and they look for the next parking slot. So from a place which was a nursery for, I would think, some of the finest judges. We gave at least 3 Supreme Court judges who started their careers in the income tax appellate tribunal. Now it has become an old age home for them. So there's a huge change. And then the other problem is that some of the members who are working there for the last 20 years, 15 years, and they still have 10, 12 years to go. They are younger ones and they're juniors. They are 10, 12 years senior to them in age. So the ITAT right now is I would think, in a very difficult time so far as this transformation takes place, and to what extent it will be able to retain that institutional culture. I think that's something we'll have to see how things unfold. And that happens with every thing. And I'll just, when you were talking about the technical members, and I was little, I would say, I wouldn't say upset, but I was a little taken aback when I heard those comments. For example, Sumant mentioned about why should somebody have a reputation because he has to go back to the market. I mean, if you have the reputation because it's part of the strategy, then you are in the wrong place. Judiciary is not the place for you. Unless that pressure comes from the call of your conscience, if it comes from business exigencies, for God's sake, leave it. And the sooner you do it, the better. If somebody is maintaining his reputation because he has to encash it after his retirement, that's a very unfortunate state of affairs. Please understand the only way tribunals can function, and I can tell you with my 22 plus years, almost 23 years of experiences, that when you attract the right people, and when His Lordship mentioned about youngsters present, including those present in the courtroom, in this room, I'm sorry. The first thing that we need to do is to attract the right people. And when we say right people, they should not only be right in terms of being technically sound, they should be right in terms of having right set of cultural values, the value system. Second thing you have to do is, you have to give them an atmosphere which is free of fear, which is free of external influences, and that's where culture has a role to play. And third thing that you have to do is, you have to monitor their performance and link their career to their performance. And only those who are conversant with the functioning of that particular area are the best people to judge. Tribunals have to develop a strong culture. The focus, when His Lordship talked about control and Article 227, I think focus is to shift from control to development. That's the key. And unless you do that, unless you stop thinking of control and start thinking of developing these institutions, there will be problems. Fortunately, ITAT for a very long period of time has been able to withstand it. Talking about pendency, I'll just give you a quick statistics on that. When you talk of a status, think about it that ITAT had 300,000 appeals pending in 1997-98. And how many benches were functional at that point of time? I think 35.5 benches were the functional benches. And from that 300,000, we could bring it down to 100,000 appeals in 2003. And finally, in 2010, we had 40,000 appeals. Now these appeals keep going up. They go up to from 40,000 to 1 lakh, then back to 30,000, back to 50,000. And there are some people in the system whose careers depend on playing with the statistics. So they tell you that, look, this tribunal had a pendency of 300,000 in 1997. I have brought it down to 98,000. And they don't tell you that in between it was 50,000 also. So that's the kind of people you are developing today. And that's the culture. We have a culture in the government, whatever establishment says, somebody is ready to repeat it. If you have these kind of pygmies around you, institutions will not grow. And that's the problem with the tribunals, unfortunately. I forgot your second question, like my...
No, I think you answered that. How much time do we have? How much time do we have? I know Justice Seshasayee is here. 10 minutes? Okay. So why don't I take 3 questions, and then I have an additional question if there is time.
Can I just... for 1 second. I'll just add one small thing. When we are talking about, domain expertise, that's why tribunals came into existence because of the domain expertise and efficiency. So these are 2 kinds of tribunals. Domain expertise is not only in terms of the technical member, which we keep talking about. Even that branch of law, if you ask me to do something in IBC, I'm blank. But then once you work in a high court or a district court or Supreme Court for some years, you develop that feeling that whatever be the branch of law in the world, if I can't understand it in 15 minutes flat, it's not worth looking at. That culture has to go. You have to have people who are expert in that branch of law. Only then the institutions will function.
No, but that's actually leads to another point that I had spoken about in some other context. If you see, because tax, company law, insolvency law, and lot of commercial matters are outside the high courts now, when people who come to the Supreme Court as judges, many of them have never dealt with these issues before. And then they sit on appeal from the NCLAT, from the ITAT, all of that, having never dealt with that, either during their practicing period or during their tenure as High Court judges.
But till 1998, at least in the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, we had a reference system.
Yes.
So we were not taking away it was not the tribunals were not taking away anything from the courts. They were complementing them. They were assisting them. The way I saw my role as a tribunal member was to assist their lordships by taking care of all these technicalities. And when you have a reference system, you have every part of the technical thing explained, and their lordships have to take a call only on the question of the law on those things. That needs to go back.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to add something. You know, much has been said about appointments, about judicial members, about technical members. Like him, I also have 24 years of experience in tribunals, and I've joined at a very young age of 35. So I just want to share my experiences. It's not whether you're a judicial member or a technical member. The domain knowledge which is spoken about is extremely important because it is new even for a High Court judge who has just joined. The subject is very new. Likewise, even for the bureaucrat or who has come from, like you said, chartered accountancy, or who is, come from the income tax or customs and excise, because there are plenty of them who have joined NCLT as technical members. For them also the subject is new. So what is important here is how you grasp your commitment, your hard work, your values, and what you bring to the bench. And you know, we have excellent assistance from the bar. Really, I'm talking about NCLAT and even in NCDRC where I had worked. Excellent assistance from the bar. So it all depends on, and it's an evolving jurisprudence. So it all, once again, depends on your commitment and your, how hard you want to work, because the kind of infrastructure that is provided, all of you have, spoken about it time and again. And Honorable Justice Shiva Kirti Singh has also said that time and again he has given, requests to the government about staff. I have worked in District Forum, State Consumer Forum, NCDRC, and in NCLAT. NCLAT, I mean, it's supposed to be, as Mr. Batra has said, so much hope was there in what we can contribute to the economy and resolution of companies. Can you believe that we had only one steno? One steno come PA come PS, and he's outsourced. And I mean, I wish somebody from the government was also here today. That would have balanced everything. See, because how many requests we make, there is absolutely no response. As one of you have said, there's no response. So if that steno is absent, you speak about pendency, the numbers are there on the, statistics. You've also said, when you speak about pendency, you speak about why it has taken not 330 days, but 725 days, for example. There are days when we had handwritten the judgments. Days when they say, okay, now you buy that, what is that software? Dragon software. To get tuned to it, it also takes time. That types corporate debtor as corporate debtor, for example, this is. And all this takes time. So what, as Ms. Ravi has said, going back to, civil courts is not the answer here. Strengthen the existing infrastructure, strengthen the existing system. Have more benches, have permanent staff. In NCLAT Chennai, there's not a single permanent staff. Everybody is outsourced. It's not 80%. You've said, I think, on a broad census, because you covered 10 tribunals. In NCLAT Chennai, it's 99% are outsourced. And there's I think 2 people who have come as on deputation. So this is the ground reality.
Thank you. I'll take, if there's any, I'll take one more question. So there's a person who has got the mic already. So then I'll come to you. So 2 questions I'll take. First, the person with the mic.
All right. Thank you. So I have
If
not
you can
seen-
keep it brief, sir. Thank
okay,
you.
I will. I'll keep it very brief. I have not yet seen the report, so I've just seen the findings which are there in the small little booklet. Has there been any analysis of the quality of orders or judgments that are coming from the lower tribunals, especially? I mean, we did some analysis in our firm of SERC orders that were appealed in APTL. And we found that about 70% of the orders that were appealed from SERC to APTL were either reversed or were modified. So I'm just trying to understand if there has been any analysis of what's happening to the orders. I mean, what's the quality of the orders that's being passed by especially at the lower level of the tribunals?
No, so in this report we have not. And generally we have stayed away, generally DAKSH has stayed away from analyzing the quality of judgments or orders because that requires a different skill. Now, we're talking about institutional processes. But see, I won't read too much, and I'll defer to Justice Singh on this. I won't read too much into reversals per se. Okay? So reversals per se is not the issue. Reversals for lack of knowledge is the issue. Okay, reversals because you differ on an interpretation or a understanding, that is okay. So we'll come to that, but that's it, sir.
I'm coming from GST background, GST 9th year. Look at, we are talking about strengthening of the benches. Irony in GST, which is the biggest indirect tax reform. GST 80, which was supposed to be. But look at the irony, the website, GST 80 portal got launched yesterday only. When we are talking about strengthening of the benches, where institutional information is lacking, where we are heading for? I do not understand if public policy need to really strengthen the tribunal, or we are moving from tribunal to civil court. Public policy need to be revisited. When GST got introduced in July 17, biggest indirect tax reform, not having GST 80 for last 9 years, all the petitioners are moving to High Court or Supreme Court. So justice system requires revisit, complete revisit, and discipline must be there. It should be on both sides. Taxpayers are aggrieved one, and they are praying for. So when you guys are sitting at the bench of such big forum, I'm only passing on my message to you that ITAT, when you refer to, you're saying that 1944, right?
We all share your frustration.
Harish, Harish, just one line to say. Yes, it's not frustration. It's only looking at the way forward, because this report would be incomplete unless we look at the formation part, which is needed on time. If it is not on, justice denied. Justice delayed is justice denied. That is what we have heard, and that is what I'm finding in GST 80.
Okay.
But Harish, one point which is missed, I think that we need to think about more seriously, is this tenure business of the tribunals.
Yeah.
Because I think now the time has come that you have so many, today the kind of young lawyers you have available for work, that's a kind of pool you never had. This is the finest talent. I mean, hats off to the younger generation. And if you can't channelize that energy into specialized tribunal services, I think that is something we are missing. And when we talk about the value system, as ma'am mentioned, we need to have institutional knowledge base. We need to have institutional culture, like we have judicial culture. We shouldn't see tribunal as an intrusion into judiciary. And that's only possible when you have people who have greater affiliations to the tribunal system. When experts come there, for example, in the ITAT, people come from Income Tax Department, IRS officers. They keep on talking about IRS business to no end, justifying, glorifying it. Then you have judges coming.
Can I just want to make 30 seconds comment.
Please go on. I think Seshasayee is here,
I
but
know,
we'll
Justice
make you
Seshasayee,
wait for 2 minutes and then we'll stop.
I'm so sorry. Just 2 minutes. I just want to respond to your comment. I don't think it's only the public policy to blame. Most of these selection committees have Supreme Court judges on them. We need to review L. Chandra Kumar of 1997. We need to review Madras High Court Bar Association judgment of 1990, I think, maybe early 2000. And Justice Seshasayee was in Chennai when this issue was earlier discussed. Justice Sikri was here. He's the author of the second Madras High Court Bar Association judgment. And he's on record to say that I agree that when the Madras High Court Bar Association was given, it was on different times in India, but it needs a review. So I think it's also Supreme Court which needs to review how the tribunalization.
So just one sentence to add, and that's in from me. When we talk about reviewing judgments, much more than that. I mean, think of the positive, one of the biggest strength of the present establishment. They have their ears on the ground. They are willing to experiment. They are ready to take any kind of bold policy decision. Now, as a corollary to this, it's time that they look at the reforms which were brought about 4 or 5 years ago. They review it, to what extent they are in the right direction. Are these reforms producing the right results? If not, if there's a need to tweak with the policy, do that. I think that's something which is far more. We can't change the system through judicial intervention. There's a system which is working for it. We have to make the best out of what is given to us.
Okay. So, we are out of time. I think the advantage of having such a panel is I didn't have to do too much, right? They were answering questions even before I posed them. One question, one word answer from each of you. Do we need to completely divorce all procedure influenced by CPC in tribunals? Yes or no from all of you, and then we will hand it over to Justice Seshasayee. Aparna? Do tribunals need to be influenced by CPC as per procedure, or do we need to devise something completely new? So it depends, no, yes or no.
I think better to be away from the technical rules of CPC. Well-trained judicial mind will always decide according to some, understandable principles. It will not go haywire. And that is what is needed. And about the judges all judges are not suitable for all posts. I must confess that. Selection process has to be more reasonable. What kind of judgments has come from them earlier? And in High Court also, while selecting judges, we are always conscious to have at least few tax-knowing lawyers being elevated. That was the practice. And we had that specialized knowledge in High Court. And of course, CPC technically should not, delay the matters.
Well,
like
NCLT rules say that the NCLTs are not bound by the CPC procedure. Because the people who come, they carry the baggage of CPC, and it's so difficult to unlearn. That's the problem.
I would agree, unlearning is far more challenging. And we had 3 presidents who are former High Court judges. And what I noticed was that they were more interested in the kind of framework that we have in the judicial system. And CPC, I think they are the ones who are in the leadership now. But on a conceptual note, I would agree with his lordship that tribunals need to be more flexible, and tribunals must bear in mind the fact that they came into existence because of some problems with that system. It is not, they are not small high courts or something. They are in existence because of the limitations of the conventional judicial system. But ironically, all those things which were wrong with the judicial system, these are being brought back to the tribunal. And we expect them to be more efficient with
Correct. Absolutely. Okay, I'm sorry, I know there are a few more questions, comments, apologies, we can't take them today. Thank you, Aparna, Justice Singh, Sumant, Batra, and Pramod Kumar. Thank you very much.
If I may request the panel members to please stay back for felicitation and a short photograph. It was, yes, sure. I'm so sorry.
So I introduce myself. I'm Seshasayee, formerly a judge of the Madras High Court, and I'm a member of Judicial NCLAT Delhi. Sorry, what was supposed to be a keynote address to inaugurate a panel discussion, I ended up delivering a valediction address. It's essentially because the driver who was to drop me here, he knew well that I have not seen half the Delhi. So it's because evening, beautiful time, lot of traffic. He took me to most part of Delhi, which I need not cover. And thanks to him, I saw some part of Delhi too. Now, coming back to this, I don't know what exactly was discussed before me and how the theme was projected. Therefore, in one sense, I'm starting on a clean slate because most part of the thing I would not have been influenced by some thought process, and I don't carry any thought process that way because I'm pretty lazy in preparing lectures and this thing. But when I entered, the discussion was more on search and selection, Mr. Batra canvassed, and need for domain experts. I try to have a slightly different take. I'm not just going to confine myself to that part of it, which is a very smaller part of the larger issue. The larger issue is, can you afford to run tribunals on ad hoc basis? It would have been comment, and mind you, the other day the Honorable Chief Justice of India had said High Court judges are not even willing to come to take up an employment. And somebody from ITAT, Mr. Kumar, and he said, even Batra said, there are youngsters, energetic, everything fine. What is that you are paying them? What is that you are paying them? After serving the judiciary, stupidly perhaps for 20 years, I'm not even receiving my pension. It is getting embroiled in certain problem. As one of my friends said, Sai, are you stupid to take up this NCLAT job? I asked, why? If you don't do any job, just don't do any job, you get 50% of your salary as pension. For getting remaining 50%, why should you take up this employment? You can as well do some arbitration or enjoy the time. Youngsters, you are not going to get with this kind of salary. Please understand, they have got dreams, they dream big. They plan a lifestyle which is not in our this thing. For us, roti, kapda, aur makan, some kind of a makan, some kind of a roti, everything is fine. Here, you ask, you go to the matrimonial market. I'm not too sure about Delhi or North. At least in South, I know if a boy wants to get married, the girl actually starts with almost is like buying a laptop. You go with a configuration, they almost say the boy so much height, so much waist. Those looks, those are all things. Looks like Shah Rukh Khan, Amir Khan, all things fine. Then he has to have an apartment in Manhattan facing this bay. No, what the hell is happening there? And the man is not going to get married for next 100 years. At least if you want to find some local girl, he need to have at least a Gadi. And not Maruti 800. In our times, even a cycle and a motorcycle. See, if the kind of standards that the current society is imposing is a kind of pressure, is that I would not have got married at all. When I got married, my only status was marital status. That was the first status from where all other status I got. Right? This is important. In my generation, the prospective parents-in-law will only check whether the boy is good enough to make a career and whether he's going to come up. But unfortunately, everybody wants Ambani's son. Unfortunately, Ambani has not begotten too many children. Therefore, let us not talk about hypothetical situation and dreaming big. Draw the youngsters. How? Draw the seniors. How? Now, why I joined NCLAT? Because the only job I love passionately is writing judgments. It is my passion. And for 20, 30 years, this has been the only thing I've been doing. I don't know any other job. So it is and therefore, let us set it aside. But the larger issue is, I draw something from the court for ABC reason. From the classical judicial system, I'm going to take away some of the jurisdiction, put it in a tribunal. But who did it? I'm not going to say this government or that government. The government eventually over the last 75 years have done it. Then is it not the responsibility of the government to show the judicial system or the judiciary of this country, you are running an institution for 200 years and this is what we have. And we are running the institution for only so many years. See what we could do. This is not happening. When you take away something from the judiciary and show it and you run the show, you get an opportunity to run the show. What is that you are doing? I'm not worried about, see, if you want to care somebody, okay, it is somebody might have commented it's a post-retirement benefit. Not necessarily, because other day the CJI is worried we are not getting candidates. How they will come and why they should come. Doing nothing, they get 50%. Therefore, you want to create some kind of an ornamental institution. Tell people, in his case, it is even that has not happened. That was his worry. And want to say that we are going to solve all the problem. Please stay away. Either you run the show professionally. If you can't, at least stay away. Something we will do. Even that is not happening. So we are gone to a stage. We are in a stage. It is pretty alarming. Please let us try to. This is one thing. Then I heard a lot about talking about timeline. Stop clock justice. For me, I would call it stop clock justice. The whole system is run by certain kind of an algorithm. Solomon Grundy, born on Monday, Christian on Tuesday. So file a petition, 14-day admission. What is this? Please understand that when government develops policies, they go for macro impact of it. Here is a scenario that is existing. We want to change the system, and in this system, if you have to bring about a system, you experiment. Every government is entitled to experiment. Every society is entitled to experiment, and this government is also experimenting something. Nothing wrong about it. After all, the social living is a dynamic process. We cannot arrest it. Every society must have the right to experiment. It has experimented. Good. Now the issue is, if the government, other day I read about certain statistics. Previously, the resolution process, the success rate in IBC is about 15%, 20%. Now it has reached 30%. And what is the total number of resolution process that has concluded without through the judicial process? That was a very interesting, staggering number. And in fact, pre-CARP, the pre-institution resolution is, the size is getting bigger. I have got one issue here. When government thinks about it or plans a policy and legislate to support that policy, they look for the macro impact of the policy. If it works for 60%, well, 70%, well, 80%, fantastic. But judiciary works, which you call it the court, or you call it the tribunal, or whatever pet name you have, please have it. I don't worry. As long as you are deciding the rights of the citizen of this country, please understand we are working at a macro level. For us, every individual citizen is important. His individual rights are important. Why? Because Constitution, which binds you and me and everyone in this country, says individual rights needs to be protected through some mechanism of law. Therefore, I will be shirking my responsibility and my commitment to the Constitution if I have to say that all the red shirt color, this is easy way to dispose of the cases. When I was in the courts, I used to say, there are 3 cupboards. Allow all the appeals. Second row, dismiss all the appeals. Third, allow and remand the appeals. Matter solved. Even better thing, take a light out, fire them off. All the cases will be destroyed. No, this is not the way. You cannot, in order to find a remedy, you cannot multiply the agony of a citizen. You cannot multiply the agony of the citizen. Because you want to have a success rate, you cannot have the multiplier. As long as we are not suffer that pain, as long as we have not experienced that kind of pain, we will never be able to understand the pain. But we understand. We in the system understand. For me, every citizen is important. Let us put it again in the IBC category, because there is good and bad aspect of it. Here, as a promoter, I try to develop industries, work for ABC reason. What is business all about? About risk-taking. I took a chance, I took a decision, and we are all wise in hindsight or stupid in hindsight. So one of my business decision flopped. I anticipated something, it did not happen. It was a colossal failure business-wise. What happens? The second day, the lender, who was my friend, because he also wanted me to borrow money, otherwise his business will not be there. So because there's an RBI guideline, immediately he has to initiate an IBC. And IBC, sometimes I believe, sitting in the court, I will behave differently, because I'm bound by certain rules of law and I cannot break it. But here, I have the liberty to explain certain things. Here, the scenario completely changes, and I will be losing the company without even getting a reprieve time to mobilize funds to pay. Even if I have to settle, see, if I got half a dozen creditors, one creditor becomes impatient or doesn't trust me, he wants to initiate CARP. If I have to settle them, I will settle. Others are willing to wait for me. Believe me, they trust me. Your IBC doesn't allow them to do that. If I have to settle after CARP, somehow I have to settle them all. Why should you worry when somebody is willing to wait? Therefore, the ideal thing is, this is one part. Second, the litigant psychology, I would rather put it that way. Are we responsible citizens to use our institution correctly? I will say 30% of the litigation in this country go anywhere are speculative litigations. But we poor judges will never know whether something is speculative, fraudulent, or just vexatious litigation. It all happens because we will get to know only at the end of the game, but not given. The parties may know, as Justice Midha of Delhi High Court said, the parties may know the truth, but only the courts are on trial. We will get to know about it only in the end. But then still the entire grind should go. Shall we say that your face looks, your dark complexion, I'm going to dismiss it because I don't like your face? Impossible in this country. A country run by rule of law, under the Constitution. And no conscientious judge would ever do that. And if there is delay, what can anyone do about it? Whether a cardiac surgeon says, I have done 200 cardiac surgery today, he doesn't. Why should you single out a judge and criticize him? Now, fantastic thing is happening. On 14th day, you have to admit it. Otherwise, you have to give explanation. Take it from me, the best of domain expert you send. Not even 14 days time, not even notice would have been sent, sir. Not even notice on the petition would have been sent. You want to admit a matter without hearing the other side and dispossessing him and expropriating him of somebody's rights. And somebody will have a templated answer solution, and every day he is going to write half a dozen things. At least if he writes some Sri Ram Jayam, he is going to get some what do you call, Sadgadi. I'm going to say this, I'm delayed because the notice was not served. Notice was not served. And this other extreme, what is going to happen? Anyway, we have got about 48 NCLT benches. We will admit them all. Let NCLAT manage them. And we are only 5 of them. And so, come tomorrow, somebody will be superannuating. Therefore, as long as you don't have vision, as long as you don't have a game plan as to what you want to do, as long as you don't understand what judges do. I have got technical member, I asked them, so why can't you tell your friends, okay, in the secretariat, they know the better, and they said, sir, 2 things. Number 1, after retirement, there's no respect within the system. Good, I thought only in judiciary it is happening, but it is happening. I'm glad that it is happening everywhere, and there's a grand equality. Now, you are an outcast once you are retired. I don't know about here. And you all be a strange animal inside the same premises where you walked all your years. And second part, say they cannot understand, they don't know or they cannot understand what we are doing. The second part is more interesting. Has anyone ever sat in a court and watched what we are doing? Forget it. I take a lot of things from Mr. Sunil Batra. Tomorrow when he comes and wants to file a reply, I said, this is an appellate court. Why do you want to file an appellate? Because I got a timeline. Is he going to spare me? Therefore, we can sermonize. We can make some big statements, but are we finding solutions? And whether it is in our control to find solution. Sister made a statement that we don't have stenographers. True, we don't have stenographers. I write my orders. Most of us, after 60 plus, we are typing our own orders. I've not even got my laptop yet. She was talking about Dragon Gate and Dragon 16. I'm yet to find my laptop. I have my laptop and iPad. I'm using it. Come on. This judicial system in this country is a huge comedy. You need not know Kapil Sharma show. You just watch our system. It is an amazing humor. And because there is a lot of dharma in this country, despite this country the show is running. And the Indian patience and resilience, God only knows. It is this patience, this resilience that keeps this system together. Right? Small things. I came to Delhi interestingly, I'm given a car. It's an 80-year-old car. I understand, I came to know only day before yesterday. It broke in the middle of the road day before yesterday in the evening. So I came and pushed the car. Yet another place, it again broke. And there, the part of the tire was off the road. So I had to push. I could not do. Therefore, I requested a passerby, and we all pushed together to run an official car of the Honorable Judge of the NCLAT. Right? And I just wanted to know the list of rules. It says a judge is entitled to 250 liters of car. I'm glad, because in High Court we are given only 200 liters of car per car. Then the next condition, however, if you travel beyond 500 kilometers, I have to pay the government 22 rupees per liter. And to and fro, 10 kilometers up, 10 kilometers down, in between lunch, another 40 kilometers or 40 kilometers a day over. 10th day or 15th day, this will be over. Now I'll be using government car and paying them and using the government car. Therefore, I checked with the registry. They said nobody is doing it anything. But why should there be a rule? I'm given an ID card. Behind it, it has written, if you lose it, you have to pay a fine of 50 rupees. For fear of losing it, I've not decided not to use it. But what an insulting state of affairs. What an insulting state of affairs. You want judges, young men will not come. Some stupid senior fellow will come and you will keep insulting us. An old dungeon car, you travel in this road after rains with gutters. What will happen to our back? See, do you have solution? Yes. Unfortunately, in this country, if everything starts and ends with Modi ji, possibly if Modi ji I can get an appointment, I will explain to him the state of affairs, why he also had to look into those small areas. I don't know to whom to say. So many people are there in Delhi. All you have got multiple contacts. Just bring in some change. Second thing, another aspect is about state of affairs in Madras. If you want to attack the pendency when the number is still less. Now, when there are 500, see what is the productivity of a judge? sitting in the armchair somewhere and you can deliver, great lecture. Why should judge require vacations? Absolutely fantastic. But have you ever seen a judge sitting 8 hours a day doing work? Do you take care of his maintenance, body maintenance? Please understand, we also come to serve the nation knowing that we are not going to earn the kind of money other people in other business are going to earn. But then we deserve some quality time to be with our family, right? We are not saints. We are not saints. You only see what we do in the court. You have never seen what we do also in our house. Not on marriage. I remember a judge of the High Court, Madras High Court. I went to meet him. I was a lawyer then. He later practiced in the Supreme Court. Now he's about 80 plus. He said, there was some controversy about it vis-a-vis his daughter. He said, my daughter is 28 years, is yet to get married. All these years, I'm only with law, court, cases and judgments. She has not got married. And very unfortunately, my wife doesn't understand me. She said, because the girl did not love, therefore the responsibility became parents to find this thing. We have got judges like this. I got a judge who could not have the money to buy one apartment. All his money he saved was his terminal benefits. But he could not buy an apartment. He's still in a rented house, I know that. A judge of the High Court. What do you say? What do you speak? Therefore, all I was coming back to Madras, there are 1,000 cases. You appoint, it's already time the second bench comes, right? The setup is already there. I do not know what is holding them up. Now, if you have got 500 cases and 2 judges managing it, it will be easy, at least some number. See, ideal number is 1 + 1 - 1, 1. That ratio generally is good. Means pendency is 1, you file 1 case, dispose 1 case, the balance continues to be 1. That is more or less the better equation. The ideal equation will be you increase the number of disposal. Now, when 500 cases are there, 2 judges can manage 250 cases, the timeline and everything can be managed. Now, you make it 500 cases. Now, when ultimately comes 2,000 cases, how are you going to list it? Even if I list it, what is the time I have to hear people? I don't have the magic, man. Therefore, friends, it is much, much easy to say, when you are in the process of finding solution, first sensitize those who run the system. Secondly, about domain expertise, I partially agree with that. And both judges as well as, I hold this view right from the level of civil judge junior division, even to the high court judges, we need training. At least those who are, see, I got 2 categories of judges. Those who strictly go by the letters of law and understand them wrongly, that is one extreme. And those who have the ability to visualize something beyond the written text of law, but doesn't know where to stop visualizing. And it is between the two you have the right balance. Who trains them? Where is that common denominator? Where is the setup? Even for the High Court, there's a cosmetic exercise is happening in the National Judicial Academy because I've been a faculty there. In 2 hours lecture, if our judges impression about his own self-estimation, about his own capabilities can be removed, and it can be planted with some fantastic theories, and other reorientation can happen. The rehauling of one's thought process can be achieved for national purposes. Then that should be magic. It is not going to happen. I always believed, in fact, I even shared it with a couple of lawyer friends of mine who have now been, who are now are judges of the Hon'ble Supreme Court. I told them some 10, 15 years back, as brother said, the selection process, at least now you know the kind of input and output of cases, what kind of cases come, what kind of cases go, each genre of cases, the category, everything are codified and you know the pattern. So instead of saying, I have got 10 vacancies, I want 10 judges, you say, I want 2 tax judges, 2 criminal lawyers, 2 civil lawyers, and everybody thinks civil law is such an easy law, everybody knows it. Sorry, it is one of the most complex law. Most complex law, most underestimated law. You don't even have good judges to decide civil law cases because I'm bred thoroughly in civil law in 40 years. Therefore, I would say, who said after issuing warrant and swearing in should go and sit and decide cases? Arguing cases is one thing, preparing case for argument case is one thing. Judging is an entirely different skill. You must be trained to do that. Are we to play with rights of citizens, and is it some kind of an on-the-job employment? On-the-job training you can occur? I also agree, when you constitute tribunal, pick the right person, whether they selected them or in the right time or not, that's a different issue. I would have appreciated if I'm given solid 1 month training. If I have to work here for 4 years, delivering something good for the nation, I need at least to know how these case papers look like. It took me a week to understand how the papers look like, how the cases are filed in this branch of law. But 1 week, zero productivity. I'll be only watching the drama. Has it ever happens in any other department that people can just you go to the High Court, elevated, you sit in the division bench, be by the side of the senior, watch him do all the thing for few months, at least some 3 months to 6 months, see how he is working. What about his productivity? So I need a division bench, there will be 1, another will be a 0, and he'll be only watching. It is important whether you get the opportunity or not, you must be in a position to deliver on day 1. That requires some kind of a special training. So you select a judge, train them for a couple of months, and let them come and serve the nation. That will, and if a High Court can work without a judge, without some 10, 20 judges for 2 years, they will as well manage the show for another 2 months. Similarly for tribunals, we need definitely training more, because especially the technical members. There are one aspect I have observed in my experience. Technical members by nature are trained to do things fearing a judicial review later. They did not realize that they are doing judicial review now. They are part of the judicial review, not subject of the judicial review. This is a distinction. I have to tell them that I am part of the judicial review, therefore I don't fear anything. But somebody is subject of judicial review. Even now they think what Supreme Court will say. See, I told them, then the first case must so what if the Supreme Court doesn't say anything in a given area? How the law has to go? Are you going to wait and look to the eastern sky and wait for some Supreme Court to deliver some judgment on the point? Therefore, brother, I think I came in a different mood. That perhaps that mood has given me the energy and impetus to speak on this. And secondly, somebody made a statement as a process of summing up this thing. He who gets a job must do a complete job of it. If he doesn't do, the spillover goes to the next higher forum. But here, the quality of the judgment. Somebody asked a question on quality of judgment. I agree fully. He who does a job must be absolutely fearless in doing a job. And he must do a complete job of it. We cannot prevent somebody preferring an appeal. At least it lessen the burden of the appellate judge to deal with that. Because in the pyramid, as you climb up, the number of judges will be less and less. Therefore, those at the bottom should work. And I think I just collected the thoughts following the proceeding, whatever that is happening before me. And I don't think, going back to civil court is a bad idea because civil judges are not trained well. So don't go to civil court. This expert courts are at least something is happening. Something is happening here. All we require is to strengthen the system. You need both infrastructure support, which can be from building to a car to a stenographer to whatnot. If you want productive, see, I am going to invest, the expenditure secretary says, you can have only this pen and not a Mont Blanc. I'm okay with that because even if I sign, only my signature carry value and not the pen. But then, how to enhance my productivity? They cannot distinguish it because they have not seen the code working. As long as we have got institution that doesn't see the code working, we are never going, I don't see any immediate redemption. Good luck to all who have taken the initiative. Good night.
Sir, thank you very much for your enlightening thoughts. It has been truly enriching to hear from someone who engages so deeply with the challenges that our commercial tribunals face every day. I would now request Mr. Surya Prakash to present sir with a small token of our gratitude. Please, sir. I would also like to thank our panelists for such an engaging and thought-provoking discussion. And I would now like to invite Ms. Ritima to felicitate our panelists. Justice Shiva Kirti Singh, Mr. Pramod Kumar, Ms. Aparna Ravi, Mr. Sumant Batra, Senior Advocate Harish Narasappa, sir. As we draw the evening to a close, I would now like to invite Ms. Leah Verghese, Research Manager at DAKSH, to deliver the closing remarks.
A very good evening to all of you. As we come to the close of this event to launch our report, the State of Tribunals 2025, I'd like to just take a moment to reflect on whatever has happened this evening. I won't take too long. I don't want to be the obstacle between all of you and dinner. This evening, through Justice Seshasayee's keynote address, Ritima's presentation, and the great panel that we had, we have discussed the promise and, more importantly, the reality of tribunals in India. The vision behind the creation of the tribunals were clear. We wanted speed, we wanted expertise, we wanted to increase investor confidence. But as this report has highlighted, many challenges still remain. We have issues with governance, with pendency, and with vacancies, and these continue to persist. From our perspective at DAKSH, this report is not just a compilation of statistics and analysis. We want this to be the beginning of a dialogue on the state of tribunals and the future of tribunals. We want lawyers, policymakers, judges, academics, and businesses to engage with these findings and build on them, and to imagine what reforms to tribunals would look like. We believe that reform is possible with a combination of with a combination of research, advocacy, and dialogue. And we hope that the energy that we see in this room will translate into some of that reform. A shout out to the DAKSH team for putting together this report and this event. Through the last few months, Ritima, Surya, Harshita, and Neha have spent a lot of time on this, a lot of time and a lot of energy. A big thanks to our panelists and our keynote speaker for their valuable insights today. Thank you to Quantum Hub, our partner for today. A big thank you to all of you for spending the evening with us. I know it's been a long evening, but you've been very patient, and this encourages us to work further. We hope that the conversations that we've started today will go on, in courtrooms, in boardrooms, in universities, and lead to actually actionable reform and lead to an improvement in the functioning of tribunals. On behalf of DAKSH, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us again. Very good evening.
Thank you, Leah. With that, we conclude the proceedings of the evening. I request the keynote speaker and the panelists to please stay back for a picture. And for all the rest of our attendees, we invite you to join us over dinner to continue the conversation of the evening. Thank you.